how are relations between our two countries? What are you working on?
Wonderful. Let me say first that I'm delighted to be here at Manila Times. I read you, I appreciate a lot of your analysis. I love the fact that you include a lot of book reviews, which is important. It probably reflects the fact that the chairman has a hobby of reading. And I had a sneak peek at your library. Very impressive.
I should confess, I've only read about 30% of those, but the 70% is aspirational.
Yeah. I'm really glad to be here after having read you for, let's say, 6 months. I came here at the beginning of December 2021. I had the honor of being received by the President of the Philippines on 15th December 2021, and then I started my activity as ambassador of Romania to the Philippines. I have a very, very clear mandate that was given to me by the President of Romania to help relaunch relations between Romania and the Philippines. A long time ago, when the world was in the middle of a Cold War, countries like Romania and the Philippines did not have diplomatic relations. We are separated by an iron curtain. We were so-called communists. You were on the other side of the iron curtain. It was, as some of us know, a very complex and difficult world. And that's when in 1972 it was decided that we can pierce the iron curtain, we can fracture it, countries that are alike should shake hands together, even if they were members of different blocs. So that's when it was decided that Romania would be the first country in the so-called communist bloc, Eastern Europe, that the Philippines wants to open relations with. 1972. In 1975, we opened an embassy in Manila. The Philippines opened an embassy in Bucharest. And what an embassy opened in Bucharest with Ambassador Leila Shahani, Leila Ramos Shahani, very distinguished diplomat who became Assistant Secretary General of the UN.
So early 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and she was a senator and pro tempore president of the Senate.
Sister of the president, yes.
Yeah, and in Romania, she became like a public figure. She was the very, very first woman ambassador ever to set foot in Bucharest. So you can imagine a diplomatic corps in Bucharest, 1975, men only. Foreign Ministry of Romania, men only. And then this distinguished, beautiful lady, very clever, who was the ambassador of the Philippines. So she made waves, she was much appreciated. Together with her team, they succeeded to revitalize relations. Relations were at a 0 point. There were no relations. So what happened in 1975 and later on was a total flourishing of our relations. You know, I was pretty young at that time. I was a child actually. And we used to play with games of cards. And the cards, each of them had the national costume of a country. Now, when we played, we all wanted to get the Philippine card because it was the most beautiful national costume. It's a fantastic way in which the word Philippine entered our conscious and was immediately associated with something beautiful, sophisticated, desirable. That was the golden moment of our relationship. I have to say that in the team of Ambassador Leila Ramos Shahani, there was another very young lady another young lady, Delia Alberts,
Oh, yes, okay.
who went on to become the first woman career diplomat to be appointed foreign minister in Asia, in the whole of Asia. And that's fantastic. And Delia Albert, who is a personality, a worldwide personality, a diplomat that's known everywhere, she still speaks Romanian.
Really?
She greets me in Romanian. She has
That's
collections
impressive.
of Romanian
I know she speaks
art.
German, but Romanian is such a difficult language
It's not difficult.
Well, maybe for
for us it's not, but I know it is.
yeah. But I meant it as a compliment that it's not easy for us to pick it up. Yeah.
No, but if like you know French, it's very easy to learn Romanian because French,
Romantic, yeah.
Spanish, Portuguese, Italian belong to the same family of Romance languages like Romanian. You know Italian, you know 50% of the Romanian vocabulary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there was a golden era, golden team at the Philippine embassy in Bucharest, a very good Romanian embassy in Manila. Now, history, was not very clement with either Romania or the Philippines during the 80s.
Of course.
For Romania, it was a very turbulent time. It was a time at the end of the Ceausescu regime. It was a communist dictatorial regime. The leader had pharaonic projects which had to be financed with a lot of sacrifices from the people. So it was a period for us of shortages, of unrest, which in a dictatorial regime is being quelled, is being
Quelled,
kept
yeah,
under
yeah.
wraps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's before it all exploded in December 1989. And the whole people decided that we want to be a democratic Romania and we want to get rid of the communist regime. Things were not easy here also. So I guess from reading the archives that we didn't forget about each other, but relations were not as dynamic as they used to be. And then they continued. What's fantastic in my view is the fact that Romania has always had Manila on our map.
Is that so?
It is. We never ever closed the Romanian embassy in Manila. We've had for a long time ambassadors here. Well, at some point, due to the economic crisis, the Philippines
close
had
and
to
reopen,
close
yeah.
the embassy. Yeah. Now we know that you will, we hope, but we also know that you will have to reopen the embassy just because relationships, are flourishing again, begin to flourish. We look at each other and understand how much we can gain by being closer, by dynamizing our exchanges. And this is a realization that's very clear in Bucharest as well as in Manila. And honestly, I'm saying it not as a slogan, of course as an aspiration, but also as a conclusion of all my discussion with high-level officials in the foreign ministry and above here in the Philippines. So our mandate at the embassy is to help relaunch relations, to look at our competitive advantage, to make sure that each of us uses the other's competitive advantage. Now, what are Romania's interests in the Philippines?
Yeah.
We are interested in a strong, free, democratic Philippines that is at peace with its neighbors. We are interested in freedom of navigation because in a globalized world, even Romania, 10,000 kilometers away, is affected by everything that happens here. We are interested in the development of the Philippines, and to be more specific, and I know you want to take me towards economics,
Yes.
there are some areas that interest us most. You have a fantastic business process outsourcing sector. We have a lot of startups and even unicorns in Romania that look to have a global imprint or a transcontinental imprint. They look for growth beyond our natural neighbors. We can help each other by putting together these people. Romania has a competitive advantage in cyber security. In a way, like the Philippines, we put an emphasis on the IT sector. We are one of the countries with the highest ratio of students in electronics, automatization, AI, compared to the whole population.
Wow.
We have also, the government of Romania has also taken a very good measure some 20 years ago by accepting all programmers, basically all IT engineers, from paying income taxes. That was absolutely fantastic because it prevented our engineers to migrate towards a lot of countries that wanted them.
Right.
Yeah. So this helped the development of our IT sector. Now we even have a unicorn which was listed on NASDAQ. It's called WePass.
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 Okay.
It was born in Cluj, Romania, and it's a very encouraging success story. So IT, cybersecurity, we are all confronted with cybersec issues.
Absolutely.
As individuals, as countries, as companies, we can do more together. There are other areas that we are looking at, of course, trade. And we hope that the Philippines will continue to make full use of the GSP Plus, that's Generalized System of Preferences, which allow you to export in the EU over 7,000 produce services without taxes. Compared to fruits elsewhere, yours have a flavorful sweetness and even color. I didn't know that the bananas have a color before coming here. Yeah. So we want more Filipino produce and more good things that you have in this country, in Europe. There are other lines of cooperation that we are exploring now. We have a very good department for emergency situations because, like the Philippines, Romania is exposed to flooding, earthquakes, and other types of natural disasters. Luckily, we have not had so far typhoons, but the climate change is, affecting all of us. We've done well so far. Actually, the Department of Emergency Situations has been very active in Romania during the COVID crisis and has helped us weather the crisis better. We know we have things that we can learn from you, and we know that you have things that we have things in Romania that you can be inspired of. There's a lot we can do in education. We've made huge progress in the last 30 years in providing curricula materials to schools virtually. the European Commission is using a lot of Romanian software and contents in its development assistance for third countries. I will stop here, though it's hard to stop when I know how much more we can do and how much willingness we have, both in Romania and here, to do more.
Well, Your Excellency, there's a lot of things I think we can explore. I think what surprised me when I visited your country in 2016 was how similar our people were, especially with our Christianity background.
Yes.
Of course, yours being Orthodox, but ours Roman Catholic. But still, I felt that there was a kinship there somehow that existed that surprised me, and I think not many Filipinos know how well our two peoples are so similar and how easily that we can get along.
Absolutely.
That my frustration was that maybe it's different since I went there, that the Philippines was not in Europe's radar, including of course Romania's, and then in this part of the world, when we're very much North American centric. Europe is regrettably second to that, despite the fact that we had this long relationship with Spain. But I was wondering, what can be done to put us on the radar of Romanians? I know when many Romanians I've talked to think about Asia or maybe even Southeast Asia, of course, Thailand comes to mind naturally, as it does in many countries. And Thailand, to their credit, do a great job in promoting their country. Of course, there's also China, which looms large over the whole region. So that is like a magnet for all of the businesses that come to our part of the world. But what can you, I know you've only been here since December, but what do you think can you recommend to our country to get more attention from Romanians looking to this part of the world and maybe looking at in Thailand and China, and maybe help notice the Philippines as well?
I will try to give an answer, but I will keep thinking of it because I think it's one of the critical questions. And frankly, every country asks itself this. We ask, what can we do to make the Philippines more aware of us, more interested in us? So I'll try to give some partial answers from my own point of view. First, I think we all have to value what we have. In Romania, you have a very good image. And the image is, I will always believe, the image is made by people. You have, like in the Philippines, a lot of Romanians who work abroad. And then they come back home. Many of them come, some don't. Many of them say, my best Filipino friend when I was working on the cruise, my best friend when I was working was a Filipino. Oh, Filipino are wonderful people. So, you usually have one ambassador in a country, but each of us, everybody who travels abroad is an ambassador. And you have so many Filipinos abroad that inevitably they make an image. It's like a mirror made of small pieces. And because your people are so appreciated, hard-working, honest, adaptable, the image of the Philippines that results from their daily work is very positive. So let's keep doing what we do, namely to support, to protect, to help promote the human rights of Filipinos working abroad, because they are your most valuable ambassadors. Institutions matter, governments still matter. Anything that can be done to relaunch the dialogue with any European country is important. The pandemic, the pandemic upended our lives and frankly made diplomacy much more difficult. We had Zoom meeting, we had WebEx meeting, but nothing compares with a handshake,
Of course.
with a few words exchanged on the corridor. So yes, a more active diplomacy would help. And of course, in Romania, it would help immensely if you reopen your embassy. Your embassy used to be located in one of the most beautiful houses in the center of Bucharest, a piece of real estate that's very comfortable. I think you still have it. I hope you'll reopen it in that location.
Yeah, I know. Actually, first I was very disappointed when I went there and tried to, and then there was a notice on the gate. Oh my goodness, it's not there anymore. And I've actually, I was for a brief time early in my career, was with the Philippine consulate in Canada, and I'd actually served with people who were in the embassy in Bucharest when it opened, and they were telling me about the transition from communist to capitalism and how people were really taking it seriously.
Yeah.
For instance, my friend was telling me that people were queuing for something, and then when people tried to get ahead, and people were saying, "Oh, we're a democracy now."
Yes.
So it was fascinating to hear those stories, and finally for me to see the country myself. What are some of the things that you'd like for Filipinos to think of when they think of Romania? Can Romania be, for instance, our springboard to the rest of Europe?
I definitely think it can. And frankly, maybe both alone, Romania is a good friend and can be a springboard, but the whole European Union is interested in the Philippines, and all the member states together. Many of them represented here by embassies, but they are all interested in the Philippines. Of course, the interest heightened lately for reasons that are not the most positive of reasons. But you should, and I'm sure you do, take advantage of this heightened interest and of this disponibility for enhanced contacts and cooperation. The European Union, turning from Romania to the European Union has a lot of programs that has extended to the Philippines. Erasmus Plus, which brings increasingly more Filipino students to European countries. Programs by which the EUSAT-CEN, EU Satellite Center, offers for free imagery helping the Philippines to weather catastrophes and
disaster management, geomapping,
and so on and so forth. Please, as a very respected newspaper, help the European Union publicize them, make people aware of them, so that you take full advantage of each one of them. Every member state, Romania as well, has a program, has different programs, including for scholarships. They are not extended to the Philippines only. Maybe they are for the whole of the world. But help us reach more young people in advertising them so that they can take advantage. I strongly believe that everything starts with people-to-people relations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, the governments show the way. So we very much hope that we shall have, starting in September, very busy agenda, bilateral high-level contacts between the Philippines and Romania, as well as other European countries, sort of culminating with the EU-ASEAN summit in Brussels in mid-December.
I was a bit surprised that you mentioned also freedom of navigation. It's something of course, Romania has an important port in Europe, or ports in Europe. But what can you expound on that? Basically, what
Yes.
your concerns are about freedom of navigation?
Well, Romania, like the Philippines, is a signatory of UNCLOS,
Yes.
the United Nations Convention which regulates navigation on the seas and oceans. We respect international law, like the Philippines, and we uphold it. Romania has littoral to the Black Sea, and via the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, navigation lines to Mediterranean, Atlantic, and so on and so forth. We have, therefore, the biggest port on the at the Black Sea, which is called Constanța. It's a very ancient port.
Yes.
That's our main way of, how our exports leave Romania for the outside world. Of course, in Europe, we use the highways, autoroutes, but for commodities, transportation outside of Europe, it's the Constanța port. Therefore, logically, freedom of navigation is a critical principle for us. We have export with probably, I'm sure, all of the countries in Southeast Asia and East Asia. That's no wonder because everything is globalized. We have companies producing Romanian computers in Brașov. Of course, they use components which come from the Far East.
Right.
So it's a normal, logical concern that navigation develops according to UNCLOS, according to international law, that nobody tries to hinder one way or another the freedom of navigation. It's very closely related to sovereignty, to the concept of sovereignty, which is one of the basic concepts. So anything that hinders freedom of navigation, that encroaches upon the sovereignty of a country over certain territories, an important concern everywhere in the world, but definitely in Europe.
You also mentioned education.
Yes.
Could you? I know I think you were disrupted also by my unexpected call, but you said that that was an area of possible collaboration between the Philippines and Romania. Could you explain a bit?
We believe in Romania, like you do in the Philippines, that education is the basis for development. There's nothing like education. We have already some links, namely universities that partnered with each other. Yes. Recently, I shouldn't say contributed. I sort of helped plant the seeds for a partnership between the University of the Philippines and the Polytechnical Institute in Bucharest.
We would say you were the godparent.
Yes, yes. We in the embassy are trying to be very active in working with universities, in visiting universities. Even the biggest celebration of 50 years of diplomatic relations was organized together with the University of the Philippines. Why? Because they are the custodians of the most valuable thing that our country has, the youth. They are the future, and if we want to achieve something, it's them who will benefit, it's them who will take further our work, the youth.
Besides Manila Times, I'm also chairman of the National Book Development Board. Maybe I can visit you sometime.
Yes.
And maybe introduce my colleagues to you. Maybe there's something on, because we do translations of
wonderful.
Maybe we can explore possibilities.
I think people should read more. Even in Romania, people should read more books. Of course, our generation was brought up with libraries, but now we can read books on the internet, on the mobile, on the tablet, but books have to be written and read, and we'd be delighted to contribute in any way to step up cooperation here. Romania is participating in every big book fair in Europe, and there are a lot of book fairs. We have 2 fantastic book fairs of our own. One is Gaudamus, the other one is a book fair which is organized by the radio, main radio station, but we have others.
Yeah.
Anything that can be done to invite people to read more is useful, including for the development of our countries.
Right. Last question from me before I turn out. The president is giving a lot of attention to agriculture, and you have a very strong agriculture sector. Is there any possibilities of cooperation there that maybe the Philippines should be looking at?
We've already initiated discussion at the level of governments for an exchange of experience, and maybe for other measures which could sort of weather the food insecurity that we are all facing. I don't want to say more about this because I'll be happy. It's still ongoing. Discussions are going on. But I'm very, very hopeful. And I also know I visited some institutions here. I know that you have world-class research in agriculture, which would be of interest to us as well. And finally, climate change is not only natural catastrophes. Climate change means you have to rotate cultures, you have to change the cultures that you grow. So we need to learn more from you. What can we grow in the south of Romania as the south of Romania becomes drier, hotter, and so on and so forth. And we hope to cooperate also cooperate more in the field of food processing, which is an area that ensures every country like a surplus of image. If you have food processed in your country that travels abroad, travels widely, it helps your image. It's the image of a good food. Gastronomic diplomacy.
Food diplomacy.
Food diplomacy is important, yes.
But that you had some questions?
Oh, but I'm so happy to be in front of you because I was reading you and...
Ambassador, our Trade Industry Secretary recently said that the Philippines is veering towards industrialization or high value or shift to high value industries. Is there something that Romania could offer for us to achieve our goal to become a fully industrialized nation? If I may add, one of our strengths is our semiconductor industry. We are part of the global supply chain for spare parts such as cell phones. So is Romania has something to offer to us?
I'm sure we do, and I'm sure cooperation with every country can offer something. We've been strong in semiconductors, but for several decades we gave up just because the specialization, the productivity is here in your region. I know that some of the components that you produce here are being used in some of the biggest Romanian brands, like the car Dacia, D-A-C-I-A. I know that there's an export. I'm sure it can be expanded, but at the basis of every cooperation and is the dialogue between partners. So that's what we are here for the embassy, to make sure there is a dialogue. You can learn a lot from our successes. You can learn a lot from our mistakes, because Mistakes teach you a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There are some industries that we gave up and now we regret it. Anyway, the dialogue between our officials, between our business sectors is key to looking clearly, to seeing clearly how can we help each other, how can we help you. There's a specific area where we have the expertise of contributing, namely nuclear energy. We have a nuclear power plant which ensures around 25% of our consumption of energy. We are on the side of those who say nuclear is clean. You are interested in nuclear energy, and one of the tasks of the embassy is to draft a program of measures that would help us help you to, master this area and to become stronger in this area, which is absolutely critical for the future. Green energy, yes, we are all interested in green energy, circular economy. But until we get there, we need other proven means, and
Right.
nuclear energy is one of them.
Proven, reliable.
Reliable,
Yeah.
yes.
And our government is also grateful to Romania for opening your borders for our Filipino workers fleeing from Ukraine. Was it difficult for Romania to come up with a decision to open your borders, notwithstanding antagonizing Russia for making such decision?
It was the logical decision. There was absolutely no debate. We've decided immediately to offer safe passage to all Filipino workers at the request of the government in Manila. And a majority of the Filipino workers in Ukraine were repatriated via Romania. No, it wasn't difficult. It was logical, humanly. We wanted to do everything we can. We also have around 2,000 Filipino workers in Romania. I understand that their experience is good. I speak regularly with the recruitment companies here and in Romania. We look at measures that we can propose the new administration, so the rights of the Filipinos in Romania would be even better protected. But none of the Filipino workers in Romania wanted to leave as a result of the Ukraine war. So they are safe, they are protected, they are in a stable country there.
It's embarrassing to point out that one of the problems that my friends had experienced while they were in the Philippine Embassy in Bucharest, I guess the Filipino seafarers liked Romania so much so that when they docked, they tend to jump ship and stay in Romania.
Do they? Yes. Yes.
So one of their problems was to, make sure that they abide by, get back to work and stuff. But I think you may have a problem with Filipinos discovering your beautiful country, and they may not want to leave.
No, we need them there. We need them there. We are very compatible. We are family-loving people. You said Romania is an Orthodox country and the Philippines Catholic, but the Orthodox and Catholic Church are twins. And Romania was the first country ever visited by a Catholic Pope, Pope John Paul II. And the same year that Pope Francis visited the Philippines, he visited Romania as well. And Pope John Paul II called Romania Virgin Mary's Garden. and that's the best thing that was ever called about us, ever. So yes, there are similarities. I have to say that not only workers, but a lot of seafarers were evacuated via Romania because they happened to be on one of
so
the
close,
Ukrainian ports. Yes.
You would talk about education a while ago, but here in the Philippines, sports is very much linked to that, and Romania excels in a number of. I hope there's some. We just opened a new Academy of Sports in the Philippines. It's the first time that the Department of Education set up a school dedicated to developing young athletes. So you guys have a strong sports program, particularly in gymnastics, athletics,
Tennis,
yes,
swimming.
of course, yeah, maybe we can, there's some possible cooperation there.
I'd love it. Let's
Yeah.
speak about this. Yes, I'd love it. I'd love it. Well, there was an instance where your great hope, tennis hope, Alex Yala,
Yes.
she met Simona Halep. She was in Romania and met Simona Halep. So, we have a number of sportsmen and women that are role models in Romania, like Simona Halep, like the holder of the world record in 100 meters swimming, David Popovic. And I'm sure they could be role models for Filipinos as well. But also we are good in box, but you are much, much, much better than us. So yeah, sports is very, very important. And also what's interesting, and I hope we'll find a framework to speak about this. In Romania, there's a tradition of sports classes. Every week we have at least 2 hours of sports. Everybody. That's so important for the development of a child.
Yes.
But this means a lot of facilities. Every school has its sports hall and
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Maybe is it possible to get from your embassy just some statistics about trade and investments?
oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I'm particularly interested in drafting an editorial about
Yes.
reopening our embassy and making an
wonderful.
argument for that.
Yeah.
Because I've been writing about how the Philippines should really connect more with Europe, and we've just some people dispute that we've forgotten our European ties, but it seems like we have. I mean, and there's a connection there that is worth reestablishing, right? And Romania, as you said, is
Yeah.
one of those countries that I think we should know better and do work with more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you look at each of the European countries, well, I speak about mine first.
Yes.
There is a willingness to,
Yes.
open up
And
more.
I would say more so than in
Yeah.
other European countries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And there is a history and a tradition. For instance, one of the things that was traded intensely in the 70s was our cosmetics brand, Gero Vital. If I bring it here now, because it was a Romanian who invented geriatrics, Ana Aslan, and she was known in the Philippines. Also, the Romanian tractors were known here.
Okay.
We knew a lot about other Filipino things. Like in 1975, I have it in my library, Jose Rizal's seminal book,
No limitangere.
No Limitangere.
Yeah.
And we all read it. It was part of the
Wow.
100 classics that you had
Wow.
to have.
Wow. Wow.
So there's something there. We don't
Yeah.
need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Yeah. Just,
Just remember.
yeah. Just
Well,
remember.
we'd be very interested also if there's opportunity for cooperation with Romanian media. We're always looking for,
Yeah.
for partnerships because our sources are basically Agence France Press and AP, and
course.
we'd
course.
like to. We do a lot of training here as well, so
Yeah.
it would be good for maybe some of these guys that we take on to get exposed to journalists from other countries. If there's an opportunity for that, please keep us in mind.
This is a wonderful idea because one of the advantages that you have and we don't is your native English speakers. Everybody in Romania tries to improve its English. Everybody in Romania needs, especially professionals, needs to be fully articulate in English by increasing exchanges, among journalists, among students, face to face, even at a distance. It's not only a learning process, it's improving your language skills for our people. And that's very important. Actually, in my hometown, the college that I graduated launched this summer at my initiative a School of Diplomacy and Public Discourse.
Oh.
And it was interesting. Young students are interested in it. And I said, what if next year we find a Filipino college so that you have a few sessions with them?
Fantastic.
Yeah, and there was so much enthusiasm for this idea. I believe in small things. I
Sure.
believe a small thing will have, like a seed, will have
Will grow,
big
yes. Yeah.
consequences.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We enjoyed the discussion. And if there's developments from your embassy, let us know. We'd like to help you.
Thank you so much.
Help
Yeah.
you get to help you promote Romania to Filipinos.
Yeah.
And I would love to see more Philippine Romanian collaborations. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.